What happens after you achieve the thing you've been working towards for years? Just 24 hours earlier, I'd crossed the finish line of the Ironman 70.3 World Championship. The medal was mine, the race was over, and suddenly I had no idea what came next. The morning after the race, my body was exhausted. My bike was packed up and sent back to the Netherlands. 3 months of preparation, years of dreaming. Finished. And that's when something strange happened. For the first time in a long time, there was no next goal. No training plan, no race. Just me, Jans, a jeep with a rooftop tent and 11 days left before we had to return it. So we started driving. Our first stop was Zion National Park. After months of focusing on one thing, it felt good to simply walk again. No stopwatch, no performance, just being outside. From there, we headed deeper into Utah. The landscape somehow kept getting more impressive. Bryce Canyon looked like another planet. We hiked through the canyon on tired race legs and slowly started adjusting to a different pace of life. That evening, while searching for a place to sleep, we stumbled upon something completely unexpected. A campground filled with vintage Airstream trailers, Yonder Escalante. And that night, they were hosting a drive-in movie. We ended up watching Beetlejuice from the back of an old American car, eating popcorn under the stars. It felt like we had accidentally driven into a movie ourselves. The following days became a blur of incredible places. Capitol Reef, ancient petroglyphs, Factory Butte, Dead Horse Point, Canyonlands, Moab, Arches National Park. Every day brought another landscape that made us stop and stare. But what I remember most wasn't any specific viewpoint. It was a feeling. For most of my life, there had always been a plan. School, university, work, training. There was always a next step. But now, there wasn't. And strangely enough, that felt amazing. As we drove south to our page, the scenery somehow became even more unreal. Snow-covered roads, endless desert, Monument Valley, the kind of places you'd seen in movies your entire life. And then came one of the coolest mornings of the trip. We woke up to more than 50 hot air balloons floating above page during the balloon regatta. It was one of those moments where you don't even take photos for a minute. You just stand there and watch. From page, we continued to the Grand Canyon, and somehow, even after everything we'd already seen, it still left us speechless. But that night didn't quite go to plan. We arrived at a campground we'd found online, only to discover it had closed for the season. So, after dark, we found ourselves driving through remote forest roads looking for somewhere to sleep. Eventually, we found a spot. It was quiet, dark, completely isolated, and honestly, a little bit intimidating. The next morning, we woke up and realized it was actually one of the most beautiful places we'd stayed. After driving part of Route 66 and passing Hoover Dam, we returned to Las Vegas. We booked a few nights in the same hotel where our journey had started. But this time, things felt different. The race was over, the road trip was ending, and for the first time, we had no idea where we would be a week later. So we started looking. We created a workaway account, a website where people exchange a few hours of work for accommodation and food. It seemed like the perfect way to keep traveling without burning through all our savings. So we sent out a few messages, returned the jeep, and suddenly it was just the two of us and our backpacks. No car, no plan, no guarantees. The next morning, a message came in. A couple in the Nevada desert said we could come and stay with them. The place was called Pahrump, and honestly, we had absolutely no idea what we were getting ourselves into. That adventure begins in the next episode.